Welcome to Stand By Please.
With me, Antonia Collins from the Bamboo Manager Project.
And me, Jackie George from Sharjah Performing Arts Academy.
In this podcast, we talk all things stage management. Join us and our guests as we try to answer the question, what is your stage manager really thinking? Hello, Jackie George.
Hello. Here we are in June, halfway through the year.
Who'd have believed it, eh? I mean, it is absolutely crazy. Do you know what? This is week 24 of 52.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it is almost halfway through.
Oh my gosh, I know. I can't believe it. But I have to say, it's absolutely lovely here at the moment. And it's still like there's a glimmer of light, like 10:30 at night, which I am just loving. I love it at this point in the year where it's just the days go on forever. It's lush. But here we are, episode 5, the season finale of season 3. Who'd have thought, eh?
I know. We're still talking.
But I'm very excited today because on this episode, we've got one of our oldest friends and colleagues, Ryan Evans, who now owns a company called One-to-One Motivation. But Jackie and I both know Ryan from when he used to be a stage manager. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, both. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me on.
Jackie and I were just saying earlier about how great it is when we get to have a guest on and we get to see people to catch up with them. And it's a really lovely, lovely thing to do.
Absolutely. And it's just lush to see you in this really strange time of COVID. But this just feels very normal now, doesn't it? To be on Zoom and recording these things. And it's fantastic.
One of the reasons I wanted you to come on though, Ryan, was because I think you have a very, very unique perspective on being a stage manager. And also, I think for a lot of our listeners, you've got some really great ideas and philosophies about how our physical health and our mental health are entwined together. But before we get there, why don't you tell our listeners a little potted version of your personal journey and how you went from a stage manager to a personal trainer?
So I graduated with Antonia back in 2003 from the Royal Welsh College. Fantastic course there. And I've predominantly had, I would say, a freelance career in stage management and production management. That's lasted for about 10 years on and off. But first of all, it was all theatre work, which kind of consisted of dance, opera, but predominantly touring the UK. I took some shows to Europe, lived and worked in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, America. So I've been very fortunate with the world of stage management to work in lots of different countries and absorb different cultures. And that really brings home that stage management for me personally is very much a lifestyle. It's a vocation. It's not your typical job, but it's something that you buy into wholeheartedly. And for that reason, I gave it my all, like to the point where it was my entire life, 24/7. If I was on a show, that was my life. And, I left very little room for other things. And throughout my colourful 20s, I had a lot of highs and lows, and I lost a lot of weight. I lost 8 stone in that time. And I decided that I was helping a lot of people in the same ways as stage managers do. I started helping people with feeling better about themselves, feeling healthier, fitter, stronger, losing weight. And I kind of thought, actually, do you know what? I'm giving out all this advice because of my personal experience. And I don't know if what I'm saying is right. So I took myself off to Spain to train to be a personal trainer for a 6-month course. And I just kept training, as in from an educational point of view. I loved it. And I decided that actually I wanted to get to a level 4. Which involved sort of behavior change and looking at being a master trainer, which is the highest you can get in personal training. But I did open that course when I got there, and they said, so why do you want to be a personal trainer? And my answer was, I don't actually want to be a personal trainer. I'm a stage manager, but this is just something that I'm interested in. I just treated it like another freelance job. I'll take 6 months out and go and do this in Spain whilst I'm dealing with some personal issues. And actually, what I've come to realize now a lot, further down the line is that no matter what jobs we're doing, it really is about our physical and mental health and combining the two and how we can apply the best versions of ourselves. And we're all human at the end of the day. You know, we have highs and lows, challenges, things that we're really proud of, things that we just we want the stage to open up and swallow us into a pit. You know, we all have these experiences. But ultimately, for me, it's the physical aspect of where we are in that moment and combining it with the mental aspect, which is kind of often our inner voice, you know, what we sort of say to ourselves.
What led you to the complete switch to personal training then? And how, because I've seen many a stage manager that have stepped away and then the elastic pulls them back. Yeah. And then how did you break free?
So I set up as a PT in London in 2008, and I had a 2-year, what I would say was very successful, of sort of incorporating the two worlds, and it worked. Given the location I was in, I was able to dip in and out of smaller freelance jobs. And then my PT work was becoming more and more successful with clients. And I ended up speaking at a world conference on obesity. I wanted to set up my own clinic in London on obesity solutions. And I spoke at a world conference in Thailand. And that's really when the tides turned for me. I thought, right, this is it. I debated surgical interventions against holistic approach. And I'm proud to say that I won the debate wholeheartedly with a stadium full of doctors from all different parts of the world. And 4 days later, I had a trauma, which was I was spiked. I had my drink spiked when I was traveling after the conference. So within a week of having the absolute peak of my career in personal training, somebody put crystal meth into my drink, which was either a cup of coffee or a bottle of water. So in a nutshell, I ended up in prison and then I was sectioned. But ultimately, I came home, I had a nervous breakdown and lots of mental health issues. And the pull for me then was that I knew I couldn't apply my personal self and my vulnerability to expose, talking about weight loss and my journey up to that point. I didn't have the capacity, mentally or physically, to help others in that way. But what I know I did have, which, you know, I stand true to my word for the rest of my life, is the foundations of being a stage manager, and a good one at that. You know, I'm grateful for my training, I'm grateful for my mentors, and I have that foundation that allowed me to slowly come out of a nervous breakdown where I knew I submerged myself into a company that was fantastic. I exposed my vulnerabilities and said, look, I'm looking to get back into it. You might have to bear with me. And yeah, it was nurtured, and it took a lot of courage, mine, to do that. But that literally got me back into stage management, and I fell in love with it all over again. And I went from production managing some tours in Switzerland with Henri Guiquet Dance, and then eventually working for the Welsh Language National Theatre of Wales and getting a full-time job as head of production. And then I decided I had a little segue into another career, which was working in PR marketing, doing big, large worldwide publicity events. And that was fantastic until one day I decided, actually, I've regained the best part of 7 stone through stress and emotional eating and having a nervous breakdown. And I decided to complete an Ironman. I thought I would have the support and the infrastructure to be able to train and lose the weight for that. But actually, it was the nature of the job. Now, this wasn't specifically theatre, but it was the nature of the job and the lifestyle that I was in that was really pulling me in different directions. And I couldn't, for the life of me, with all the knowledge that I have in this field, focus on number one, which was what my needs were at that time. So I managed to get through the Ironman, fortunately. And it was probably, some would call it a day of lots of epiphanies. I asked my future husband to marry me at the end. I wrote my resignation in my head and then put that on paper. A couple of hours later, I made it within 20 minutes of September the 11th, which is a big day for me. And yeah, I crossed the line with a lot of blood, sweat and tears, a lot of grit and determination. And then on that day, I set up one-to-one motivation. And by December 2017, that's when it all began, really.
Enormous kudos to you, Ryan. Oh my goodness. We should all do an Ironman if this is what happens.
That I don't recommend.
I think what's so important though, Ryan, about your story and your journey, I hate that word, but your journey is certainly more dramatic than lots of other people's, And I think, that's what makes us whole, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? We've all got different parts to our stories, and it's the way those stories kind of come together and interconnect that make you as the whole person, and then makes you the better practitioner or whatever it is that you're doing, because you've been through all of these things. We can all say, oh, I regret that, I wish I'd never done it, but actually that's a waste. I feel like that's a totally wasted emotion. And you just have to say, right, well, that was a bit rubbish, but what did I learn?
I do think, I totally agree with you. And I know sometimes it can be a bit hard to hear as well, parts of my story, but it really is how you apply yourself when these, things happen to you. Now, it probably makes it sound like a very sweeping statement, going to prison in Thailand and having a nervous breakdown, 9/11, et cetera, et cetera. However, there's been a lot of work around that, and it's how we apply that. What lessons are we learning from it? And it's not to sort of diminish any of that stuff, but ultimately, like COVID-19 now, like that, it's a trauma. Call it what you like, but we're all living an experience, but it's our own unique experience. So for some people, I've been through all that stuff, but I still stand by what I believe in firmly is, having gone through all those traumas, actually the effort that it took and the determination to lose weight was by far the hardest. So, you can think about all those different things that have happened to me. So that really goes to show, to really focus on my health and my physical and mental well-being. That's been the challenge, not the events that have taken place in my life, but it's really working on that number one, So I think somebody might, feel low or depressed, or somebody might just be having a bad day. And that's equally as important as to what path they choose to take from that day. And I totally agree with you, Antonia. I don't believe in regrets, because I think if we're constantly reflecting and looking back on things, like how are we looking, we're spending all that energy for back then, when really we want to be thinking we're here for a short time and a good time, let's look forward.
I completely agree with you, and it's not and not, like you said, not to disregard the crisis. That's just one split second of a journey. It's actually what you did from that moment to where you are now. That's the really exciting and fruitful part, isn't it? That's what makes us who we are, is the journey, not the crisis. For me,
yeah.
For sure.
And the power in vulnerability, I would say as well, is really, for me, is key. Like, Brene Brown talks about it. I love her work, but it really is empowering when we can accept the fact that we're not perfect. There is no such thing as perfection. Like, we can have days and moments where we need help, and it's so empowering. It really, really is. And I've listened to quite a few of the talks, and I love what you guys are doing in terms of like sending that message out there. Like, we are all human beings doing the best of what we know, and fundamentally that's amazing.
One of the things I really wanted to talk about, and I don't know the science behind it, right? I just know that when I feel physically well and physically fit, then my mental health is in a better state.
Yeah.
And when I'm working at full pelt, I'm doing long hours and long days, sometimes it's hard to keep that going, but it's the thing that I try and hang on to. But that's a real thing, right? If you're feeling fitter and healthier, then that helps your mental health. Is that a real thing?
Absolutely. I mean, our bodies are phenomenal. And I really I love what our bodies can do, how they can heal themselves if if something's wrong, how they can recover from things. Like, it is amazing. Like, don't ever underestimate the power of what our body can do physically, but also what our minds can do mentally. the sky really is the limit. So yeah, when we do something that's good for our physical health, of course it has a knock-on effect. It has that ripple effect. And, and for me, that ripple effect gets extended even further. So if we've been the best versions of ourselves without the pressure of it, but if we just live in it, the best version of ourselves, and that is going to go on to the people you surround yourself with. You generally know that when you feel good, you're in a great job, you're loving rehearsals, you give off an aura, you give off a vibe, and when you're in those moments of jobs, you're thinking, just get me to the end of this contract, which we've all been there, that shows in all of our language, whether it's our body language, our presence, our feelings, all of that stuff. So I think, yeah, absolutely. And there is a science behind it. When we exercise, we give off endorphins. When we exercise, we're natural. All of our organs are working better. They're hydrated, hopefully, drinking plenty of water, that kind of stuff. It's like, if you're going to run a car or you're going to run a piece of scenery or equipment and you're putting the wrong fuels in, or you're not quite giving it the warm up it needs, maybe even an actor. Do you know what I mean? If you're asking an actor to just go out on stage and perform, yeah, they'll be able to do it. But actually, are they going to feel good doing it? Probably not. You give them a good physical moment, you give them a good, time to prepare mentally to get into that character, they're going to put an outstanding performance in. And I think it's the same for all of us, no matter what your job is. I really do.
What's your go-to advice then for protecting us, protecting the individual in sort of, how do we do it? That's what I need to know. That's what I want to ask. How do we do it then? Yeah,
definitely. Well, I mean, I've created my own toolbox, if you like, of things and lots of tips and hints. And, it's our internal voice. So if we start with that, I think you probably, now that it's 2021 and we've all come out of COVID, there's so many things out there. Like there's lots of buzzwords: self-worth, self-care, compassion, believing in yourself. It's the whole online spectrum is saturated, which is great, right? But at the same time, it has its downside as well, because then you can feel even worse because you're thinking, well, all this advice is out there, but actually I'm not applying any of this to myself. So my first question would be, how are you feeling about yourself? Like even right now, just listen to this, like ask yourself, like, what's going on for you? Do you know what I mean? Where is that worth at the moment? Like, how do you feel about yourself, whether it's in the job, because actually that's our internal voice. That's the narrative that we're living by. So, there's affirmations people use all the time, and, people can feel very silly doing them. It's something that I used as a tool quite a few years ago, and it was extremely positive for me. I felt absolutely bonkers doing it for the first time. And then I found ways of doing it and managing it. And, I love a Post-it still, and I think for me, it was just writing out an affirmation that contradicted my internal voice. So when I was feeling particularly down, it was like, I am enough. And that's actually quite a common one. Now, I've taken that to a different level, but to remind myself, to sort of say that to myself, whether that was in my head or whether that was out loud in the mirror, it was actually to write it on a Post-it note, stick it somewhere where I would look at that Post-it note every single day. And normally the first thing in the morning is what we do: brush your teeth, look in the mirror, and I see the Post-it note. Now, after day 2, that was it. It stuck. And suddenly I was like, for me, that didn't feel good enough, actually, to say I am enough. I was like, no, I want to be somewhere else. I don't want to be in that place. I want to be a bit further down the line. So for me, affirmations is a really good one. And, that's something we can all have in the wings, but also, you can stick it wherever you're staying. It's about asking yourself, what's the narrative in your head? What would you like it to be? Even if it feels uncomfortable, write it on a Post-it note or chalk it on the board or whatever it takes. Write it on paper, have it on your phone, have it as a screensaver, because it'll trigger something. It'll trigger that in you, and it's what you're saying to yourself. So, you might put in there, if you're working on a job, you can put, I am the best person for this role, So sometimes we tell ourselves, oh my God, I'm stage managing this job. I shouldn't be stage managing. I'm not, I'm not experienced enough. I've just too much responsibility. Can I do it? Blah, 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 blah. But actually, you put that on a post-it note and you look at that every day in the wing and you're like, I am the best person for this role. And I'm doing my best and I'm doing what I love, and, I'm thinking now, actually just saying it, like, would I do that? Would I put that on a post-it note? Probably not, if I'm being really honest. But I would create an acronym that kept it to myself. I would put an acronym on that because I know what the meaning is. I know what it means to me, what it represents for me. And it just oozes that confidence and that feeling for you. And it can just be a support network too, having that message to yourself.
It's just like a positive trigger, isn't it? Like you said, if it's an acronym, it could be a picture that reminds you of what that affirmation is. I love that idea. I really like that idea.
Yeah. And if an actor come off stage, right, and goes, oh my God, I've just messed that whole entire scene up. I've just ruined Act 1, Scene 4, and there's a whole company on stage now left to pick up the pieces. I feel absolutely rubbish about myself. Who's the person to pick up those pieces? Who's the person to make that person feel better, right? So we all know the answer to that. So if we can do it for other people, we absolutely can do it for ourselves.
That's so true.
100%, 100%. So, and if you're struggling now with that idea of how do I do this for myself, naturally it feels good to do it for other people, it feels weird to do it for myself, then what I would say is, if you can't do it for yourself, that's okay, but maybe do it in a mindset then of how am I going to help somebody else? If I know I'm feeling particularly overweight at the moment, or I'm struggling to, even turn up to this rehearsal because I really don't want to be here, it's like, what would I say to a friend? What would I say to an actor in the room? What would I say to the director? If the director come off and was like, oh, I really hate this scene, I don't know what to do with it, then we're all human. It doesn't matter who you are in the company.
I'm the type of person, I've got my Fitbit, right? And I'll try, and I'll log how much water I'm drinking a day. Because, really where hot climate, you're in aircon, you sort of dry out like a prune. So I drink my water, I log it, and then you do the breathing exercise on the Fitbit, right? I'm the only person I think I know who I do the breathing exercise and my heart rate's higher after I've done the mindful breathing than before I started.
Oh, this is a brilliant segue, Jackie. Let's talk.
But do you know why? It's only because I have to do it the best I can be. And why am I? And I'm pressure of breathing. I've got to breathe correctly because the watch is telling me to.
I can honestly tell you now, that exercise, that trigger is not working for you.
Oh, thanks.
So what do I mean by that? It's about finding your thing. Do you know what I mean? So it really, really is for me, like, Antonia and I have talked about this on endless sessions of work where we've kind of gone like, what is your thing? Like, it doesn't have, I love it. Mindfulness, I'm a big fan, right? But actually, there are days where mindfulness will just send me into a spiral of not good things, and you can go, yeah, but, be present, right? Meditate. Like, I've done it all. And there are days where that just doesn't work. And there are months where that doesn't work for me. If I then do something totally different or something, it works. So it's not about, oh, mindfulness works for me, so that's my plan for this job, or that's my plan for the next 12 months. No, if it ain't working, switch it up. You have the power to change it. But find what that thing is. So I say that with a lot of love, but if I don't say it to you, like, how much longer are you going to go lifting your heart rate, stressing about, and there's probably times where you've ticked that box and you haven't drunk the bottle of water, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? And that really is okay. But how do you create those habits of change? How do you create that to work for you?
Okay. We're getting to the point where I am going to tell my Ryan Evans story, right? Because, God, he's worried now. Which
one? We've known each other a long time, Antonia. What's coming out?
I know, but no. I want to say this, and I might choke. So let's keep going. Let's go. But when I say Ryan changed my life, he genuinely did, right? Because people that don't know me in the flesh, I'm 5'2" and I'm quite curvy, and I've always been the same in reality. And that's, I've had an up and down body image. But the last few years, I've concentrated on being fit. I was like, that's the most important thing for me, is being fit. And, you know, I had two fairly smallish children and a partner that was away from home a lot because he was out on tour. And I really wanted to get into running. I really liked the idea of running. Oh my God, Jackie, when you were saying about the Fitbit, oh my God, Antonia's adventures in yoga. I thought I would look like Jennifer Aniston. Clearly that didn't happen. But I thought I really fancy running, but I'm too fat to run. Right. That was totally what was in my mindset. And people were going to laugh at me and I could never be a runner. Well, as it happens for me, luckily, this was one of Ryan's phases of working in stage management. I had employed him as a production supervisor at Welsh College. And this was, so I was 42. So this must be 2012. 2012? Yeah. So I was 42. And I said to Ryan, I want to run, but I can't run. And he said to me, right, 7 a.m. tomorrow. And I was like, what? And he said, I'll be at your door, 7 a.m. All right, then. So I mean, everything I owned was bright. Everything I owned was bright pink, Jackie. I think I had bright pink leggings, bright pink top, bright pink trainers. I was like a stick of bright pink bubble gum. Anyway, we ran out of it. And then we got to this hill. And I said to him, well, I could never run up that. Don't be ridiculous. And he said, well, I see, at that point, I didn't know Ryan was a pathological liar. I know this now. And he said, well, just run to one lamppost and that's all we'll do. All right, then. So we ran to one lamppost and then he was like, oh, come on, we'll run to the second. Keep going. And before I knew it, of course, I was at the top. And he was like, so see, you're a runner. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he was like, did you just run? And I was like, yes. And he was like, well, what's the problem then? And I was like, there is no problem. And literally, but having somebody else do that with you was just so important. And, you know, I've run a few half marathons now, and I've done some 10K races. And for me, I did fall in love with running. And I don't run every day. And some days I'm like, oh God, I can't be bothered. But for me, for my busy brain, running works really well. But, you know, it took me till I was 42 to find that. So, you know, people listening, do not give up. There is something out there for you. You've just got to find it. And I think the reason why a lot of stage managers run, a lot of touring people run, is because it's so simple. You literally put your trainers on and leave the door. You know, you've not got to go to a gym or find somewhere to work or whatever.
Is it okay for your thing to change? And also my boredom threshold's quite high. I'd be like, oh no, done with that now.
It's a bit weird though.
And switch it up. Do you know what I mean? Like talk about sort of attention deficit. I am there with you. And I think our busy minds, and Antonia can vouch for this too, we all have. That's why we're so good at what we do, especially in the stage management world. Like, we can multitask. You know, I can be listening to Standby LXQ4 or 5 other conversations, and I can look on stage, and you can. Do you mean this? And the list is endless. So then to say, you know, meditation Monday morning every week for the next 2 years, like, is that really your part of your? It might be, but actually switch it up. You know, and for me, like Antonio said about the running, and I think running has, we could do a whole day talk on running, but actually it is the simplicity of it. But it's the pressure that we put on ourselves and the expectation that we put on ourselves that stops us doing it. Like, everybody, in my opinion, can run. Okay. So it starts with, you go for a walk and then it turns into a jog, whatever it is. But it's like, if you say, I want to go out and run a 5K and you haven't run for a long time, you're not going to feel great running a 5K. If you go, I'm going for a walk, and if I run for 2 minutes on that walk, happy days, I'm going to be proud of that. And that, it has to start somewhere. You can be Mo Farah, right? But he started running one step at a time. So whoever you are, wherever you are, there is something that will apply to you. And there are things that you need to prepare for. There are things you don't need to prepare for. But for me, I think it's like, just get your heart rate up for 5 minutes. Honestly, it's the best de-stress tool that you can apply to yourself in any part of the world, in any job you do. If you can get your heart rate up for 5 minutes, and then decompress, like you will have a different perspective on that situation. So, I was thinking before we were talking today, I was like, okay, how would I advise someone to do this? So for me, stage management, you write a list, yeah, you do our pre-show checks. So to make that a habit, how do you put on that pre-show checks, number one, you? So you're not gonna forget to prepare the ammunition for a gunfire in Act 1, Scene 3, right? Because it's on your checklist. So if you can apply, it doesn't have to be number 1 because you're likely to skip straight to number 2. Like put it on number 8, whatever it is, and just say, and that can be, I'm going to go for a cup of coffee. I'm going to go and read 2 pages of my book or a magazine. Or it can be, do you know what? I might be a bit sweaty after it, but I know I'm going to change into my show black. So actually, I'm going to run to the fly floor 3 times. You know what I mean? It can be, I might do 10 shuttles across the stage. If you're on a 10-meter stage and you just do 10 shuttles you've just run 100 meters every single day whilst you're setting up for the show. And if it's number 8, you're less likely to skip it. If it's number 1, trust me, you might just skip it. And if it's number 10, you might just go straight to beginners or whatever, whatever's next. If it's right in the middle and you've allocated the time that it takes to do that, it'll be notebook down, pen down, number 1. And I'm giving 5 minutes to myself every single show, every show call.
I love that tip. Put it in the middle. That's so true. Yeah. I always go for the middle things first. You're like, I just had this, you're like the sort of stage manager's Joe Wicks. I think you should get on it. I love it.
I can't do that lean in 15 nonsense, right, bit chicken, bit broccoli, bit lean in 15. I mean, that just stresses me out. It really does. His voice, I think he's done an amazing job with the exercise. But my goodness, when he's cooking chicken and broccoli, I'm just like, oh my God, somebody turn that volume down.
Yeah, like, I know. But, you could do it with a headset on. Shake hands, off you go.
But you've just made me think about another thing that would be good for stage managers for exactly that. Because I'm trying to get into it and slightly successful, hit and miss. But skipping. With a skipping rope, because literally, I mean, oh my God, that works your heart in a way that, and that's something that you could literally go out the stage door between the half and 30 minutes to go, literally do 5 minutes with a jump rope and come back in again.
100%. And do you know what? Like, if you're the type of person that wants to do that on your own, great, go off and carve out that time and that space. If you're somebody who's in a team and like I'm that person that needs like a little bit of accountability, like bring them on board. Do you know what I mean? Yes. We're usually in a team, and it's like, do you know what, guys? I'm gonna come on this job when we start our pre-show check. I'm gonna commit to doing this, and you never know, you might just inspire them to do something for themselves. But if you start with you, like, and apply these really good habits to yourself, I love the skip and rope idea. I would say personally, I can't, I consider myself quite fit. I cannot skip for 5 minutes. I could probably skip for 2, but that is my limit.
It's really hard. But it's really difficult.
I love the idea of a challenge though on a 3-month job to go from 2 minutes to 5 minutes. I mean, I'd be a sweaty mess at the end of it, but bring it on,
That's great. I mean, Antonia knows about my alter ego as a brownie leader. But this year, actually, with the girls...
I feel like I know another layer of you already.
I know, but we've been doing skipping with the girls, and I did sort of impress them with my skills from 20 years ago. You just got to make sure you've got the right bra on.
Yeah, definitely. And do you know what's even better is an imaginary skipping rope. I do it as a warm-up for my online hit class, and it's brilliant. It gives a whole new sense of freedom to skipping. Because that frustration, like I've done 4 skips and I've just hit my ankles again. Like, get rid of the rope for now. And honestly, you just do a pogo. I call them pogos and popcorns as well. But, you skip there, like, and you put a little bit of side to side in, and suddenly you're doing a quick little shuttle. Like, feels great. You're out of breath, but embrace it. Your body will catch up with the breathing. I promise you. It won't let you down. You'll keep breathing.
That makes me feel really good, Ryan, because I started skipping without a skipping rope, and then I felt like I was cheating. So I bought one, and of course it's infinitely harder with the rope, isn't it? Because you're literally like, oh no, I've just caught the rope, and now you've got to go again.
But to start off with, though, if you know what I mean, if you can do 30 seconds of imaginary skipping, then try 15 seconds with a rope, because that's the next level, you know. Definitely.
What theatre do you not know that doesn't have a bit of sash in the corner? Come on.
Definitely. And a stage weight, you know. One of my things, every hit class, I do 100 squats. All my clients know me as, we're going to do 100 squats. Whether you like it or not, we're going to squat. It's one of the best things you can do to burn fat. And, you know, those 12, are they 12 kilos? I can't even remember.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Yeah, pick up a stage weight, hold on to it, and do them. And if it's too much to do 100, do them in 10s. But if they're on number 8 of your checklist, you'll do them.
Brian, please do a little theatre stage warm up with some stage weights and some sash. I would absolutely be the first to sign up, and I'd be doing it. Well, but you know what, though? I think because we, where I work, we really embrace, we have this common first year. So all the students do exactly the same teaching in the first year, whether they're production art, stage managers, actors, musical theatre, and every day is a different day. So they'll do like yoga one day, they'll do kickboxing the next day, whatever it is. And sometimes the production art students will absolutely be in that journey and they really enjoy it. Some days they take a little persuasion and vice versa. But I think if it's got some sort of relevance and reference and you are teaching them how to, you know, because we teach them manual handling and we jump to an 8x4 piece of steel deck. If we can build that up gradually with a stage weight, awesome.
Absolutely. And it's how do you make it a habit that like you want to do? Do you know what I mean? If you start saying to yourself, oh, do you know what I mean? I hate the thought of running. Don't bother packing your trainers for tour. Honestly, like save yourself the space in the luggage because, you know, put a skipping rope in. Or if it's not a skipping rope, give yourself the time to think about what it is and be kind to yourself. Like, because if you need to have a cup of tea and sit down and you don't need to see anyone, or you need to get to the fly floor and sit on the floor for 5 minutes because you don't want to see anyone, make that part of your process of doing something for yourself because, you know, we give so much of ourselves to other people. And, you know, I really do believe we can only be the best at doing that when we give a little bit for ourselves. You know, take the word selfish, you know, split it up. Like some people say, oh, don't do that. It's a bit selfish. Or I feel a bit selfish going off for a run every day. Or, take the word itself, break it down. It's self and it's ish. Like ish, a little bit of it. So just give a little bit of yourself. Be a little bit selfish.
What a great episode to end this season with. We're off on our summer holidays now.
We hope you all have a fantastic summer and we'll see you again soon. Until then,
Jackie and Antonia, off comms.